Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at scary true stories. Yeah, let's just get right into the video. In the 1930s, near my hometown, a man killed his wife, his mother-in-law and his 3 stepchildren, dismembered the bodies and hid them in the root cellar. My great uncle and his father, my great grandpa, were out hunting when their dog ran off barking. Uncle followed the dog and found a burlap bag. He opened it and found the head of one of the children. When he told us the story, he said he looked up, and the man was standing right in front of him, another burlap bag in his hands. His dad arrived, scared the guy away, and they reported the head to the local cops, who found the rest of the victims and arrested the killer, who was hanged a couple months later. My uncle only told us the story once, but after he died, we found all the newspaper clippings about the murders in a trunk under his bed. I think it must have haunted him his entire life, especially since one of the kids was his age. It's a bit of local history I grew up hearing about, but didn't realize my great uncle was the one who found the bodies until I was a teenager, because he simply never talked about it except that one time. So he was a kid when he found the bodies or the head. That is horrifying. That is actually traumatizing. But at least the uncle was the reason for the arrest of the killer. Scary. That is so scary. There was this guy who kept noticing little things around his apartment felt off. But one night he set up a hidden camera, just to prove to himself he wasn't going crazy. When he checked the footage the next day, he saw this woman, an actual stranger, crawling out of a crawl space in his ceiling in the middle of the night. She'd been living up there for months, sneaking down when he was asleep or at work to eat and use his stuff. What the heck? Ain't no way. Back in the 90s, a couple kids went missing. About 4 to 5 days later, my dad was fishing one night, got his big Q-beam spotlight and pointed it towards the noise. It was a bloated dead body bobbling up and down in the water, eyes open and facing my dad. Turns out the kids had driven into the water by mistake, probably had been drinking. They found the other body a few hours later after my dad caught it in. My dad was so traumatized that he never went night fishing again, and honestly didn't fish much at all after that. I think anybody would be traumatized after finding like 2 bodies. Fishing. A lady in my city tortured her older kids, a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, to death and stuffed them into her deep freezer for 2 years. For those 2 years, her younger kids had to walk by that freezer knowing their siblings were at the bottom of it. When she was caught, she said she had no regrets and that her children were demons, all over a delusion that the older kids were sexually abusing the younger ones. Oh my goodness, so the kids knew. Wouldn't they be scared too? Like, my mom is crazy. What if I'm next, kind of thing? They knew. This happened 3 months ago, but a friend of mine bought a small house in a housing complex at the start of the year. She often heard her neighbor and his girlfriend arguing loudly, as did the other homes around them. One afternoon, she comes home from work to police and an ambulance in her cul-de-sac. She comes to find out that this neighbor had murdered his girlfriend. She tells the police she still heard him yelling 2 days prior. However, when the investigator came to officially interview her, he told her that the girlfriend had advanced decomposition to the extent that they couldn't get fingerprints from her. Keep in mind, this was in wintertime, which means he had been yelling at a corpse for a while. Scary part is the police didn't arrest him, and he lived in the house until the girlfriend's brother evicted him, since the home was in her name. So even after she died, he was still raging at her. He's got some mental issues, and like, how come he wasn't arrested? I don't get that part. What happened? Why was he not arrested? My great aunt woke up to her dog growling in the middle of the night. When she checked her window, a man in a ski mask was standing there and said, "Party time." She screamed she had a gun, and her dog went crazy barking until he ran off. She bought a gun after that. He said party time. What the heck? That's so scary. Imagine just looking out your window and this man is just staring back at you in a ski mask and he says party time. But also, good papa. Back in 2006, when my older sister was moving to a new city for work, my parents and I helped apartment hunt for her. My sister found a really nice apartment in a nice locality, which was absolutely perfect on paper. The residents were all working women. The landlady seemed super nice to my sister, and the location and rent were ideal. The only thing left to do was for my parents to meet the landlady and finalize the documents. However, after my mom met the landlady for the first time, she told us that she had a weird feeling about her and asked us to keep apartment hunting. So that's what we did. Anyway, fast forward a year or so and we find out from the local newspaper that the landlady was into black magic and she had allegedly murdered some of the residents to use as sacrifices for her rituals. I wish I was lying. To date, it is one of the most terrifying things I've read. That's so scary. What? She would kill the people? Everybody is sus. In my early 20s, my wife and I had a goal of climbing all of the 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado. We would typically hike up a decent portion of the peak the night before, set up a tent and camp out and summit the next day. We were climbing Cresto Needle in August 2014 and set up camp before the tree line ended. We were in a remote wooded area near a creek that was raging pretty good at the time. No other campers around, no hikers seen going up or down, super quiet and peaceful. We cooked dinner over the fire and went to bed early. I woke up around 1 a.m. with the hair standing up on the back of my neck. The only thing I could hear was the creek roaring and the wind blowing. I remember feeling really uneasy, which is unusual because we camped out a lot and we are very used to being out in the wilderness. I decided to get up and exit the tent. Immediately upon stepping out of the tent, I saw the outline of a man about 50 yards from our campsite. He was just standing still staring down at our camp. I yelled up at him but didn't get a response. I poked my head into the tent to wake my wife up, and when I looked back for the man, he was gone. My wife and I talked about it and agreed that it was probably an early hiker who was starting the summit push early. Both of us felt uneasy. Neither of us were able to go back to sleep. I laid in the tent for another 45 minutes wide awake. I decided to get back out of the tent to have a look around. I stepped out of the tent and walked around still feeling a little uneasy. Didn't see anything and still couldn't hear anything. Started going back towards my tent, and when I turned to my left, I saw the guy again. This time he was very close, maybe 20 feet or so from our tent behind some bush. I yelled at him again and started running his direction. He took off and I lost sight of him. I got my wife out of the tent and we got all of our stuff packed up and we left. The 2-hour walk back to the car in the pitch black was honestly the most terrifying part of it all. That's so scary. He got closer. When they thought he left, he was actually just still there stalking them behind the bushes. Oh, that's scary. Good thing they got out of there quick. Smart thinking. That person has probably been watching them the whole night then. Probably. About 13 years ago, my sister came home from college for the summer. One day, she got a frantic phone call from one of her roommates. Turns out these girls were not worried in the slightest about locking the doors to the house. This roommate was taking a shower, got out of the shower, and was drying off when she heard a noise coming from the vent directly above her. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight and pointed it up at the vent, and all she managed to see was an eyeball staring at her before she justifiably flipped out and sprinted out of the house in nothing but a towel. What the heck? She called 911 and the police went into the attic and arrested a homeless man who had literally been just walking around checking for unlocked doors, allegedly. Then it all started to make sense why food was going missing and the girls assumed someone was lying about taking food. I have zero clue how it was possible that this creature was looking through a vent, but it happened. What the hell? That's so scary. It's also the fact that he's been eating the food, so they were already suspecting something. But obviously they wouldn't suspect that there was a freaking homeless man living in there too. He was in the freaking vents. How did he even get up there? How did he get in there? Was he sleeping in there? This is like the movies. When you're climbing in the vents and you're just like a little spy. But no, that guy was sleeping in the vents. Well, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts are. And as always, thanks for watching. Hope you guys liked it. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!